Welcome back. I am delighted, it's my smiley face, I am delighted to introduce Mandi from Chef. I didn't know this, she's now based in London, which is awesome, because she was out in Seattle, which is far too far away to hang out. So she's now based in London. She is, among her many talents, she is a community builder, just generally in the DevOps and tooling space, but obviously specifically for Chef, which is where she works. Building communities is hard, building technical communities is really hard. Mandi does it really, really well. She's going to talk to us about, well, the title says Rethinking Your DevOps Strategy, but I think what we're really going to do is just hear Mandi doing Mandi. So I'm just going to sit back and enjoy the next 40 minutes, or 20 minutes rather. So thanks very much, Mandi.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, so this talk is short, sweet, might be some tough love, right? So we'll see how it goes. So I am Mandi Walls. I am now the technical community manager for Chef here in EMEA. So for a long time I worked in professional services with Chef. I've been with Chef since November of 2011, and I've been based over here broadly since late 2014. We have an office now, like Dan said, here in London, which is great because we've got to meet a lot of different people. We also expanded. We have an office in Berlin, so we're really starting to get a good feel for the differences in the European market and the North American market. So some of the stuff that I have in this talk reflects a little bit of the things that we've learned and what we've seen. So we'll see. Don't throw anything at me. See how it goes. So what we've learned over the past few years is that every business is a software business, right? So whether you are doing healthcare or you're doing banking, or in our case, we work with several large airlines in the US. So Alaska, basically their CIO has said that they're going to be a software company with airplanes, right? Southwest Airlines, another airline in the United States, very similar sort of perspective where you want a lot of information back from your business, you want a lot of measurable metrics, and that stuff comes out of software, and you can improve over time based on those metrics, based on supporting the people you have internally that are working on these things for you. So DevOps in particular, our company was kind of forged out of the very beginning of DevOps, and the definition that we sort of go by as what is DevOps is a cultural and professional movement focused on how we build and operate high-velocity organizations born from the experiences of the practitioners. So a lot of us, the early Chef folks, came out of operations, right? So we were in agile workplaces where software development was happening very, very quickly, would reach a point where there was a build artifact to be released, and then it would sit. And you'd only release a couple times a year. And that sort of angst and just sort of frustration out of that culture sort of became this sort of seeds, the beginning of DevOps. So over the past several years, we've really tried to embrace what is this sort of expanded culture and the ability to produce speed across all aspects of the technological organization, which for a lot of people is very, very new and very scary. So what is your DevOps strategy? It usually comprises a number of different things, right? Tools, people, the people are the big part, right? Goals, priorities. Have a lot of customers that have trouble prioritizing their work when they're looking at doing some DevOps. You got your different projects that you want to work on, a lot of things that really rely on good corporate communication, good interpersonal communication, things that we nerds are not good at, right? It took me a long time to learn how to do just this, right? So there's a lot of things that people have to practice. All these things roll together into having a really good DevOps driven culture, or a culture that will even support being able to do DevOps. And we have our, of course, arrows and things joined together, people, culture, and tools. So what's your DevOps strategy, right? The one that I see, you buy a tool. You're going to buy something. Somebody's going to sell you some DevOps, and they're just lying to you. And you're going to require your already busy team to try and learn it. You're not going to take away any of the current work that they're doing. You're just going to add more stuff to their task list. You create these workflows that are like when you see a very lovely lawn that has beautiful walkways across it, and then there's paths of dead grass where people are actually walking, and that's your enterprise workflows. People are working around those sidewalks because they're inefficient or they're going the wrong direction. And then you wonder why DevOps doesn't work for you. I love when I see that topic as a talk that somebody's giving at a conference. DevOps doesn't work. Did you do what we have suggested that you did? Probably not. And then the last thing you do is you hide the evidence. Whether you fire somebody, or you turn the tool off, or you just pretend it never happened. One of the great things about moving a lot of your CapEx to OpEx, right, in the cloud is that you just turn it off. It goes away and no one has to know. It's all a big secret. That's not what we want everybody to do. There's a lot of change that happens in really good, strong, DevOps-driven companies. So we take it back a few steps. We start thinking about what our actual goals are. It's one thing to say we're going to do some DevOps, and the problem with that is that DevOps isn't actually your goal, right? Like, we kind of got off the rails with this in Agile. I went through several large Agile transitions at different companies that I worked at, and Agile was sort of, that's our goal. We're going to do Agile. We're not sure what it's going to give us, but we're totally going Agile. And that sort of perspective where your goal is the means rather than the actual end, super tough to actually decide, number one, when you're finished, or if it was successful. So DevOps, not really our goal. What we want is some kind of business goal. We're driving our business with better IT practices, with velocity in the technical space, with getting rid of roadblocks and all of these things. We want to have some kind of goal. We want more uptime in our online webs. We want more engagement from the customers that visit our website. We want better telemetry out of our whatever our Internet of Things sensors are in our delivery trucks or our cement trucks or in our Caterpillars, diggers and things that they use to move earth around. So you really want to get at what the technology is actually going to give to you, why you're even doing technology in the first place, not technology for its own sake. I'm a technical person. I love doing technology for its own sake, but if you get off the wheels and you're doing something that doesn't provide value, it's hard to justify continuing to do it. So we figure out why we're looking at DevOps. We looked at it because it was the headline in some CIO magazine. You could do that, right? Or somebody talked about you sitting on a plane next to somebody and they said, hey, are you doing DevOps? And you're like, I'm totally doing DevOps. And then you have to go home and figure out what DevOps is. But what we're really after, broader things, larger technology goals, right? Shorter time to market for our new ideas. There's a lot of competition out there. There are a lot of startups that are disrupting a lot of really ingrained markets, whether you're in banking or Forex or healthcare or insurance. Like, there's small, nimble companies out there that are unburdened of all the legacy stuff that you still have to run, and they're trying to figure out how to get into some of your customers. So there's a lot of things that are larger companies find themselves in a defensive position, and you can start to use things out of the DevOps space to speed yourself up so you can compete better with these newer competitors. So you have faster remediation of bugs, quicker time to market with new features for customers, faster response to competitors, all those sorts of things that really start to come into play when your goals are make our apps, make our experience for our customers better. So I want to make sure we articulate our goals. This is super hard in a lot of enterprise cultures. They're not as open as they could be. There's a lot of different research that's been done in different parts of the market. If you've got experimentation, if you're able to have real discussions about what works and what doesn't without people feeling unsafe about doing that. And you want to be able to publish your goals internally. We actually help our customers do that. We have an actual workflow internally at Chef called Community in a Box. And we will help your internal organization publish what they've learned, do brown bags at lunch, do like lunch and learn, like help other teams come on board with some of the awesome things that you've done. We're finding it's a great thing when we get people to adopt it. It makes our colleagues internally at that organization feel more connected and they can learn from each other. But it's really counter to a lot of the partitioned cultures that we find in a lot of organizations. We also want to be able to prioritize tasks. When we walk into a new customer, they're already busy. Everyone is busy. Everyone went through large reduction in staff during the recession, so there's still a lot of extra work being done by small teams. And we work mostly in automation, so you come in, you want to automate tasks, it takes time to do that. It takes time away from doing the task manually. There's a lot of push-pull around how you get all that stuff accomplished. So you don't want to overburden the teams that are learning new stuff. You may have to move tasks around. This is where management has to get involved, which when you tell somebody you want executive buy-in for their DevOps product, like, oh, man, my execs don't care about this at all. They don't understand. And it's one of the things to articulate. So you really want to be able to prioritize doing work faster, doing work better, doing more automation, versus continuing to do things in a manual manner. We also want to be able to support experimentation, and this is super hard in a lot of places, and it's one of the things that sort of is first out the door. And I've highlighted J. Paul Reed's white paper for O'Reilly, where he discusses some of this stuff, where you don't really want to get too buried under what's a best practice. Some of it's not best for you, some of it's not necessarily best at all, it's just who got paid to write a press release, those sorts of things. There's a lot of can't believe everything you read on the internet. And none of that happens overnight. There's a lot of time that gets involved with the things that we do. Our booth is right across from this theater. You can see a lot of our larger customers. Some of them have been at this process for years. Like, we've been working with them for a very long time, and they're still bringing on new teams and new projects and doing a lot of these things while changing their internal culture and building a more collegial environment. So talking a little bit about the technology aspect, your teams are already busy, they're already doing things, and where you can actually start to take a look at what's going to work for you as you move towards DevOps, you want to take an assessment of where you are, right? It's like setting any other goal. Where are you right now versus where you want to get to? For a lot of our customers, they want to get to some kind of continuous delivery sort of utopia, right? So start with the very most basic things and ask yourself, are my teams doing change control? The DevOps report that was done by Puppet and Dr. Nicole Forsgren showed that was one of the biggest identifiers of success across technical companies. Are you using change control for all your changes? These are miniature steps, right? This is not, today we're doing one thing and tomorrow we're going to do continuous delivery. There's a lot of small incremental pieces that you can do. Are you automating? Do you want to talk about Chef? We can talk about Chef. Are you sharing outcomes, metrics, and data? If you have all that stuff hidden, or it's all behind siloed logins, then people don't necessarily know what they're doing and how it affects the bottom line and the goals that are actually being set. So technology is here to help you, and I won't go through this. I'm going to post these slides, so you can read this if you want to later. But it was an interesting thing from a friend of mine from high school. She actually works in healthcare, so home health aides. I think you just call them carers here in the UK. And her company bought a new piece of software, and it helped them do their baseline sorts of things. So like this technology idea, this sort of DevOps bottom line is ubiquitous. We're finding it absolutely everywhere. This is people who go into your home and help your elderly parents do their day-to-day, right? This is very hands-on, sort of basic stuff, but they're still reaping a lot of benefits from automation, from task automation, from the first line of using technology. So automation doesn't have to be scary. Things have been automated in manufacturing for over 100 years, right? So we know that it works. Applications might need some refactoring. You might have to start out with fixing some things, and that's getting better. We're seeing a lot less of that than we did like 5 years ago. Scale at any significant rate requires automation. Like, yeah, you can throw 100 people at this problem, but that's sort of a waste of the human brains, right? There's a lot of things that a human being can do that we don't have machines to do yet, and you don't want to waste them doing things that machines can do. A bit about culture. We do a lot with culture. cultural change is hard. And what I found here in Europe is that there is a different sort of culture than we find in North America. And part of that is a heavy reliance on contractors. And good or bad, if you're trying to do a cultural change, if you want your business to focus on moving quickly, getting rid of roadblocks, getting change out the door in front of customers, it's hard to do that if you're using contractors and they change every 6 months. Love a contractor. It's great to have folks come in who already know what you're trying to learn and can help you get up to speed. But over the longer term, what you want is people that are able to stick around, see the change, continue to do all of the work that is required for it. You also want to work on how many resources you actually have. And I understand that's where the contractors sort of come in. So another interesting people culture thing that has come in is the idea of these blameless postmortems. You don't want to, every time something goes wrong, fire the person that did it. You don't have enough people to get the work done as it is. So firing the guy who mistyped something is not the best first step. So another thing that we've looked at, these blameless postmortems, this is Dave Zwiebeck's white paper for O'Reilly, another short one. All the ones I'm highlighting here are pretty short reads. And Dave's really good. He actually does workshops on this now of how to have a good conversation when things go wrong, right? And being able to have this internal community that is supportive of each other, you help each other learn, figure out what happened and why the system wasn't able to be fixed or whatever the issue is. There's also a lot of research and stuff published outside of the technology industry. A lot of this, of course, originally came out of manufacturing. You have the Kaizen, you have Kanban, you have all these things that came out of sort of Japanese manufacturing and Toyota, all that stuff, and Deming and those guys. There's also stuff about, particularly about communication, which is really good, coming out of healthcare. Because when you have large distributed healthcare system, you have oncology, you have cardiology, and you have pulmonary, whatever. Like all these folks have to talk to each other and work together along with nurses and the people on the floor doing prescriptions and whatever, and they all have to have really good information. So there's a lot of actually really good stuff being published out of the healthcare industry about, and here in the UK as well as in the US, about working in corporate communications, helping that culture be sort of non-blame as well for talking about what's going on and being totally truthful and open about it. And your people are your good thing. I already mentioned the contractor culture that we've sort of found here. And you want to be able to have enough folks around that you can make a long-term strategy. It's already sort of been established that C-level technology executives have a tenure of about 2.8 years, right? So when you're thinking about how long your top-level executive might stick around, 2.8, about the average. When you're thinking about how long you have to budget for and what your strategy is and how long that's been set, usually about 5, right? So you're talking about trying to set a strategy for 5 years with an executive who's going to stick around maybe 3 if you're lucky, with a bunch of contractors that are going to be there 6 months and then decide, this is not interesting for me anymore, and then they're going to leave. So you have a lot of really competing goals, right? And a lot of places where things start to fall apart because people aren't sticking around as long as they could, or just aren't on board with the entire story. And that's super, super tough. As I mentioned before, a lot of places still burdened by cuts from the recession. It's totally to be expected, and that's sort of a worldwide issue that we've seen where before we sort of got to the idea that technology was a value center, something that creates value for our technology companies, it was seen as a cost center. So when you are kind of tough on the cycle, you've got a place where you need to cut budget, it comes out of technology, and a lot of people are still suffering from that. You also want to be able to prioritize and move tasks around so you can make progress towards these new goals. So should you build a DevOps team? I love when people ask me this one, because the answer is yes and no. And it gives me a chance to rattle on for a while. So yes, if you want to build a DevOps team as a short-term solution so you can prioritize resources, keep them out of other projects, keep them from being stolen by stuff they don't want to do anyway, as a sort of political hedge, do it. Build a DevOps team. If you're looking at doing it as a long-term reassignment, absolutely not. What you end up with is, instead of this 2-level development throws stuff over the wall to operations, you end up with a 3-level problem with 2 walls. Development throws some stuff over the wall to the DevOps team. DevOps team throws some other stuff over the wall to the infrastructure operations team. What you have there is 3 teams that are a little bit insecure. The infrastructure guys are like, my job might go away, what's going to happen here? The DevOps guys are like, well, we don't really have any say or any pull, and it's all ends up being a mess. So watch out for that. I'm getting the time's almost up here. So make space in your day. There was actually a report in the Harvard Business Review for June about getting rid of low-value work. Super short read. I love a short read. Has some checkboxes on it. That's a good one to look at. Automation. You want to talk automation, system automation, we'll get to that. The big one for our cultural piece is awards and celebration. And this is classic change management, organizational change. When you do something well, when you have reached a goal, when you have made your quarter or whatever, celebrate something. People suggest this for any kind of goals that you have that take a long time, right? Weight loss or learning things or whatever it is. Make sure you're rewarding people as they're working hard for you. So bringing it all together, all of it takes time. It's easy to get frustrated. It's easy to get off the bandwagon. You don't want to abandon it after a quarter or after 2 quarters. It does take a lot of time. Corporate cultures that favor short-term results versus long-term strategy, hard to get this sort of long-term change successful. Reorgs, new executives, a lot of change that happens gets in the way. You want to, over time, attack your mountain 1 step at a time. Start with small things, make sure people are engaged, be supportive of the things that they're learning. So tools, people, culture, the big one there, celebrate when you get to your goals. So I think that's it. Yep, so we are Chef. We're right outside. If you want to talk about system automation or continuous delivery or any of that kind of stuff, we're here all 2 days. I hope you have a good show. So thanks.